I invite our esteemed dignitaries to join us on the dais. Professor V. Kamakoti, Director IIT Madras, Professor Ashwin Mahalingam, Dean, Alumni and Corporate Relations, Dr. C. Rangarajan, former Governor, Reserve Bank of India, and Dr. Santanu Pal, founder and former CEO of Talent Sprint Private Limited. A very warm good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Indian Institute of Technology Madras and the Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of Samar and Jayanti Paul Chair. We are gathered here this afternoon to celebrate a significant milestone, the formal institution of a chair professorship that honors the values of excellence, innovation, and meaningful impact. This early career chair has been established through the generous support of Dr. Santanu Paul in honor of his parents and will serve to nurture and elevate early career faculty at IIT Madras. So to commence this special occasion, may I request everyone to kindly rise for the Tamil Thai Valtu, followed by Vande Mataram.
நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் வதனமென திகழ்பரத கண்டமிதில் தெக்கணமும் மதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரிதனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம் வியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே. வந்தே மாதரம் வந்தே மாதரம் சுஜலாம் சுஃபலாம் மலயஜ சீதலாம் சஸ்யஸ்யாமலாம் மாதரம் வந்தே மாதரம் शुभ्रज्योत्स्नां पुलकितयामिनीं फुल्लकुसुमितद्रुमदलशोभिनीं सुहासिनीं सुमधुरभाषिणीं सुखदां वरदां मातरं वन्दे मातरं वन्दे
Please be seated. To commence this special occasion, may I request Mr. Kaviraj Nair, CEO, Office of Institutional Advancement, IIT Madras, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's absolutely my great pleasure to welcome you all to this special occasion, the formal launch of Samar and Jayanti Paul Chair Professorship in Information and Data Sciences area in IIT Madras. In particular, I would like to welcome Dr. Santanu Paul, founder of Talent Spring Private Limited, Dr. C. Rangarajan sir, former governor of Reserve Bank of India, Dr. Radha Rangarajan, director of CSIR Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow, Professor V. Kamakoti, our director, Professor Ashwin Mahalingam, our Dean of Alumni and Corporate Relations, Dr. Rohit Batra, who is going to be the first occupant of the proposed chair, Professor Pandurangan, who has traveled all the way from Bangalore to attend this function, Professor Ravindran, and all other distinguished guests who are present here. And to Dr. Santanu Paul, Welcome, a very warm welcome. In fact, a welcome back to your alma mater, and a hearty welcome to Dr. Radha Rangarajan. This chair has, as you know, has actually been instituted through the generous and visionary support of Dr. Santanu Paul, who is an alumnus of IIT Madras from the batch of 1990 Computer Science, who is a pioneering entrepreneur and a committed nation builder. We are delighted to have you both, your family and friends with us. Your commitment to advancing science, innovation, and education resonates strongly with the mission of this institute. And of course, we are indeed blessed to have Dr. C. Rangarajan sir, former governor of RBI, in this occasion. And your distinguished legacy in shaping India's economic and policy landscape continues to inspire generation. And we are truly grateful to you, sir, for your presence here today. And today is much more than a ceremonial milestone. As you know, it's a celebration of purpose, generosity, and vision. A moment where individual legacy meets institutional ambition and where an act of giving sets in motion a future of ideas, innovation, and impact. Endowed chairs, as you know, such as this, are amongst the highest honors an academic institution can bestow, not just on the faculty who hold them, but also on the benefactors whose vision makes them possible. They stand as lasting legacies of belief in knowledge, in the power of education, and in the idea that the future must be shaped and not simply awaited. To our faculty and students, this chair is also a call to push the frontiers of an inquiry, to collaborate across disciplines, and to uphold the highest standards of academic excellence. To our broader community, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of how alumni can play a catalytic role in the future of institutions they once called home. As we launch this chair today, we do so with pride, but we also do with a deep sense of responsibility to honor the intent of the donor, to further the mission of IIT Madras, and to ensure that this endowment creates a ripple effect of knowledge, impact, and inspiration for generations to come. Once again, I warmly welcome each of you, and thank you for being part of this momentous occasion. Let us celebrate not only what we are launching today, but also what we are collectively building, a future powered by purpose, insight, and generosity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Kaviraj, for setting the tone for today's celebration. We now invite Professor Ashwin Mahalingam, Dean of Alumni and Corporate Relations, to share his thoughts and insights on this landmark initiative. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to join Kaviraj in welcoming all of you here, particularly Shantanu, Radha, Dr. Rangarajan, and all your friends and family. It's very nice. Typically, when we do chair launches, we have people from IIT Madras, and there are a few people from the donor side who come in. But here, I think you probably beat us 51 to 49 or something like that. Right? But welcome. Thank you all for coming. And thanks for coming. Welcome back home, Shantanu. So I just wanted to say a couple of words on the significance of this chair and on chair professorships in general. IIT Madras continues to try to become one of the world's leading universities. And one part of becoming one of the world's leading universities is to attract the best faculty. And it's not just attracting the best faculty, but it's also motivating them and inspiring them to do world-class work while they are at IIT Madras. And one of the ways in which we do that is through these chair endowments that we create. Because these chair endowments do a couple of things. One is they recognize excellent work that's being done. They also motivate and inspire people who are occupants of a chair to go and push the boundaries and go beyond what they would have otherwise normally done in terms of research, which is befitting of a university that wants to be that aspires to be one of the top in the world. So from that perspective, we've got, we're very grateful to, Shantanu, Radha and your families for endowing this chair, because, there are all kinds of gifts that we get from alumni, from corporates. But this is one that really strikes front and center in terms of our strategy, in terms of where IIT wants to go. And therefore, it's perfectly aligned with taking us forward as well. And it's also a wonderful way in which we can commemorate people that we know, we love, and we admire. So it's very nice that for several years to come, the name Samar and Jayanti Paul will be there, will be visible when acts of scholarship come out of IIT Madras. And of course, we've got an absolutely wonderful first occupant of the chair who you will hear from soon enough. But I think that's a very auspicious way of launching this chair. We have about 70 odd chairs at IIT Madras, but this is only the second of its kind. Many of our chair professorships are what we call institute chair professorships, given to faculty who are well advanced in their careers. And it's really more of a recognition of what they've done. But recently, we've been looking at this, of starting this practice of instituting what we call early career chairs, that, of course, recognizes faculty that have done phenomenal work in the early stage of their career, but also create a mechanism where we hope that this will inspire and motivate these faculty to continue to go and push the boundaries forward. So this is only the second early career chair that we are instituting at IIT Madras, and we hope that this will be an exemplar for future early career chairs, both from the perspective of donors who might generously endow these chairs, but also from the perspective of the occupants who will hopefully take this as the benchmark, as the barometer, and measure their career achievements and advancements around it. So it's a very proud moment for us, as Kaviraj said, not just to have an alumnus back on campus, not just to have a new chair professorship endowed, but to have this particular chair professorship, which is also very interdisciplinary in nature, right? And that's essentially the direction that the world is going in. We've been siloed for long enough. The idea now, and this is something that we're putting into practice at IIT Madras, is to break those silos, see if we can do more cross-disciplinary work. And, when Shantanu and I had these discussions, several months ago, one of the key underlying themes was this has to be interdisciplinary. And I don't think anything can be more interdisciplinary than a chair endowed by a computer scientist, but being occupied by a material scientist and metallurgist, right? This is about as far across the spectrum as you can think, right? So with that, so we'd really like to thank you again, Radha, Shantanu, and your families. And we really look forward to learning a little bit more about Samar and Jayanti Paul, and also hearing a little bit more from the occupant of the chair, Rohit, who will tell us a little bit about the work that he does. So, welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you for the insightful address, Professor Ashwin. I'm privileged to hear from Professor V. Kamakoti, Director of IIT Madras, under whose visionary leadership the institute continues to flourish.
Thank you, friends. Very, very hearty welcome. And Shantanu, still we remember the 1990s, where we used to go to Wales for tea. So it's hearty welcome to your alma mater. First, I have to talk about Rangarajan sir. I am in a bank, City Union Bank, which is a Century Young Bank. Not a single board meeting ends without at least a couple of mention about Dr. Rangarajan. I think, sir, all the economic reforms that you had brought has really inspired many banking terminologies, banking processes, and we are very grateful to you, sir. Thank you very much. Friends, we are actually assembling on a very important day. IIT Madras, for the first time in our history, we have crossed the 200 mark. We have 180 in the QS ranking. And the major contribution of this has been from our young faculty and students, and specifically the interdisciplinary work that has been taken up by some of our recent hires has really contributed to this growth. And so we are very happy that Shantanu, you have come forward to actually come and touch the, hit the nail on the correct spot, that we are now encouraging young faculty by giving these type of fellowship. As Ashwin mentioned, there's a second stuff, and of course we will take your name, and we'll see that more and more young chair professorships or young faculty chairs are established in the institute. Now, I'm also very happy to tell you that as an institute, we now have different modes of admissions. This year we are introducing a very explorative fine arts and culture excellence admission. We have a sports excellence admission. And then we are also bringing in people from Olympiad. So 3 modes by which you can get into the IIT and also to computer science, data science, etc. In the top courses or top preferred courses. So these things are basically now trying to bring the diversity in the campus, so which I believe can bring in more interdisciplinary work. And interdisciplinary is going to be one that is going to keep us there with the same Josh. We are also working very deeply on innovation and entrepreneurship. Friends, I am very happy to tell you that last financial year we had 417 patents that have been filed, almost 1.2 patents a day. And we started a very lofty, ambitious project called Startup Shatam. And I'm also happy to tell you that last financial year alone, we have 103 startups that have come. And totally, we have 480 startups in which IITM has invested or has incubated. And the total valuation of that is now touching 53,000 crores. So this is the impact that we are creating, and I'm sure we are going to push this envelope much more harder. And we would like to see many successful startups. You would have heard about Agnicool, you would have heard about Hyperloop, Tutor Hyperloop, Mindgrow, and so many companies are coming up. So this is time where there's a different flavor, there's a different Josh that we are bringing. And we request Santanu, you can also talk to our batchmates. Many of you can get involved. We are also bringing in more and more ways by which alumni can also invest in IIT Madras and take back a return. And part of the return, again, you can put in faculty chat versus. Okay. So thank you all. It's a very wonderful afternoon. And we are really blessed to have Rangarajan sir here. And welcome Radha to IIT Madras. And of course, to our Guruji, Professor Pandurangan, who has taught us anything today. BTech publishing in journals. That history was first written by Professor Pandurangan. So please give a good applause for him. A research culture in computer science department, specifically theoretical computer science those days, where when I joined him for MS and Santanu and other people were there as BTech students, we never thought about publication, but he was one fellow, one faculty who came and said, okay, you take this course and you publish a paper, you get S grade. I don't care what you do in the examination. And of course, there were some very interesting papers from BTech students with the Q1 journals of those times. We were able to publish. So thank you, sir. That culture still we remember as Dr. Rangarajan's legacy. We also have Pandurangan's legacy for this. Thank you very much. So again, hearty welcome. Have a good round of the campus. We have our black bag population has increased. We are now touched 120 in the recent things, and our spotted deers. We have a very good, important speed limit of 20 km per hour. So the deers are not scared of the cars. So they just stand in the road, make you wait for it to move. And so these are all some very good changes. So enjoy the campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We now move on to the formal exchange of the MOU between Dr. Santanu Pal and Professor Ashwin Mahalingam, marking the institutionalization of the Samar and Jayanti Pal Chair. This MOU is a symbol of trust, legacy, and commitment to nurturing academic excellence. It is now my privilege to invite Dr. Santanu Pal, founder and former CEO of Talent Sprint Private Limited, and the generous benefactor of this chair, to deliver the keynote address. Welcome you, sir.
I think I have a presentation somewhere. Can that be put up now? Yeah. All right, while that comes up, yeah, I was actually very impressed myself when I walked in as I think Ashwin pointed out, that we have managed to, the 5149 number seems to be true. I know that a lot of people were traveling here to join us for this event, but this even exceeds my expectations. So thank you so much, friends and family, for being here. And thank you, of course, to all of you from IIT Madras who are here, including faculty, students, staff, and everybody else. My gratitude, of course, first of all, to, in fact, starting with Ashwin's predecessor, Professor Mahesh. I don't believe he's here today. He's traveling, he told me. These conversations began. He was the Dean of Alumni Relations, and then thanks to Ashwin, and then first Mahesh, then Ashwin. And then, of course, thanks to Professor Kamakoti. I'll talk more about him later because Professor Pandurangan is here. I'm not going to lose this opportunity to talk about both of you. Yeah, I know that. I'm just being nice in the sense of getting started, so don't worry. Yeah. He's called Kama by everybody, students, faculty, everybody alike. So this was, I think, a great process. I think over the last 6-7 months, the whole thing unfolded, and here we are today. So I would like to thank, all of the people, starting with Kaviraj, Ashwin, Kama, and everybody else who has helped put this together. I think Shweta was there, and I think so was Sujata, and I believe Angelina. She's here? There you are. Okay. All right. So thanks to all of you. That's why we're here today. Now, let me start off by saying that, while I talk a lot about my parents, I can't, of course, start without talking about the campus. The thing that we all remember very much from our days as students here, does this work? Yeah, it works. The thing we remember, of course, in my memory are 3 or 4 things. One is, of course, we remember our friends and our classmates. I must tell you that it must happen with every batch, but for many years, I can say that, one of the interesting things that happened over the years is that even today, our 1986 to 1990, CS90 batch as we call it, that batch WhatsApp group lights up at least 3 times every day. So all the friends, 35 years later are still pinging each other almost on a daily basis. So here are some of the pictures. I won't embarrass myself by asking you which one is me. But we are, in fact, the group, the Jamuna Hostel group, the CS batch of 1990, 86 to 90 we were here. You can see lots of us. On the top left is Taramani Guest House induction program. Professor Tag is there, Timothy Gonzalez, those of you who know Tag. He's there. In fact, he's also in his first year as a professor. So a lot of interesting stuff here. And by the time we come to the bottom right, we're all looking more civilized because we are graduating. And we're all trying to make a mark in the world. So that's what it is. But the interesting thing I want to mention is that the student cohort that we had, we came from the notorious 1986 IIT JEE exam, which I think until 2016 IIT JEE exam was considered to be one of the worst exams. So that was like a notorious exam, very difficult. Everybody complained to the hilt. And it was an exam that I think brought a lot of us together. And in fact, our CSE batch in that year opened at AIR 9 with GDS Ramkumar and closed within AIR 21-25. So you could imagine some of the best people in the country showed up in that batch, right? Of course, the most important part is on the right side. I put 4 stars or 6 stars because I think it was a star-studded faculty team. If you look carefully, you see a lot of people here. And in fact, I spoke with almost half of them in preparation for this event, and they all wrote back from various parts of the country and the world saying that what an astonishing experience that they all had. They all remember the batch very well, and they all remember the time very well because they were probably also younger in their days, and they remembered how it was for them in their own 30s and 40s to be professors in this department. So this was, I think, a star cast in those days in faculty, and CSE was at its peak at that point. And the interesting thing here is that you see Professor Pandurangan, who taught us algorithms, complexity theory, graph algorithms. I remember you teaching us Introduction to Programming, Pascal, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so quite a few classes. I can see Kama is having an interesting time because Kama was doing his PhD under Professor Pandurangan at that time. And in his wisdom, Professor Pandurangan appointed him to become a teaching assistant in our class for all the 5 courses. And even when I met Kama like 7-8 years ago, he said, I remember your grades from 1989. I said, if you remember, please try to forget them because I don't remember. So it was an amazing time. And I think what to remember from that time is the beauty of the campus, which has only gotten more beautiful. The amazing friends we made that have been friends for life. And the amazing professors that we've had, which I think are assets for life. What's interesting today, of course, is that, what we didn't realize then, but we realize now. After that, I went to University of Michigan, and I'll have a slide on that in a minute. University of Michigan, and I remember one particular class, and this is a compliment to you and Professor Kamala Krithivasan. that I remember a class in which I'm being taught theoretical computer science advanced course by Professor Kevin Compton, who's a legend himself, and he suddenly in the middle of a class, he suddenly looks at me and one more guy, the British guy, and says, why are these two people so much better than everybody else? The training I think we got here at that time was astonishing, and I think I thank all of you for that. Of course, I think I should also mention before I go there that the ranking of IIT Madras becoming steadily #1 over the last decade, I think, right? More than a decade now? Ranked NIRF ranking for more than a decade? More than a decade. I think Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy, and now thanks to Kama, I think you guys are doing an amazing job. Keep it up, because with every passing year, our brand improves, even though we don't do anything, because IITM's rank is improving, right? Yeah. After this, I went off to University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and I was there for 5 years, in fact 4.5. And most people exit a degree, a PhD with a degree, but I think I killed 3 birds with 1 stone, right? I managed to get a degree, I managed to meet my wife, Radha, and I also managed to get a fantastic job at IBM TJ Watson Research Center as a research scientist. So I feel like, and that was the beginning of our life in New York. So there's a long story here, but of course I don't have time for that today. It's another story as to what we did and how we came back to India in 2003, and we've lived in India ever since for the last 20 years. So that was my journey after IIT. Okay, I'll keep moving in the interest of time. The reason we have this endowment today, this particular early career chair that we are going to talk about, the purpose of my sort of segment now is to talk about the backstory of these 2 people. Samar and Jayanti Paul, the name sounds lovely, but who are these people? And I think I realized when I was preparing for this deck, is that, you know, as professionals, as entrepreneurs, as academics, we prepare a lot of slides. We are what we call slide warriors, right? We can produce a lot of decks. But preparing one for your parents is particularly challenging. And one part of that, of course, is that how do you keep the emotion out of it, #1. But more importantly, I think all of us think our parents are great. How do you convince other people that your parents are great, right? So in an attempt to do that, I figured that I can't make this too serious. So I'm going to try to make it very interesting for you. I decided to myself that, okay, first of all, I can make it work if I keep it short. 2, if I can keep it full of stories. And 3, if I can keep it full of pictures. And with those, I hope I can get through 10 minutes without you guys getting bored, right? Are we ready? Yep. So the story begins, and if you, just for the orientations, I'm talking about 2 people, you might get disoriented who I'm talking about. So I put a little clue on the top right of every slide to know who I'm talking about, right? My father or my mother. My sister's here, I should acknowledge her. You'll see her in the pictures. So Haimanti, can you just wave your hand? Yeah, that's my sister. And my brother-in-law is also there, Arijit. Yes. So this story is a very astonishing story, and I heard this growing up like 1,000 times. When the Japanese were bombing the city of Rangoon, the capital of Burma, in the year of 1942, there was a huge exodus of Indians from Burma. They had to leave Rangoon pretty much overnight and actually walk back to India, right? So I picked up all this data by looking at the stuff. About 500,000 or 500,000, 5 lakh Indians walked back to India in 1942 because of the Japanese takeover and bombing of the destruction of Rangoon, right? So those are pictures. You can see the newspaper clips I have. And this is probably March or April or May of 1942. And as people walk back to India, you can see those pictures of these long convoys of people walking either on foot or on ox cart, sometimes on boats. And you can find these pictures when you look. And they walk across these deadly hills called the Arakan Hills, which you look at the geography of India, it's the barrier between India and Burma. Now it turns out my grandmother, our paternal grandmother, with a 3-month-old baby is one of those people walking, right? And when I looked at that, I went and actually looked at where they started, which is the city of Rangoon, where they finally reached the city of Chittagong in Bangladesh now. And I did a Google map today, recently, to check what this means. It's 1,127 miles, walked on foot, ox carts, and boats, right? It took them about between 3 to 4 months, I don't know exactly what, but something in that range, which means they were averaging about 10 to 11 miles a day, right? Now, interesting thing is, what do you call a child who's born in the time of war? The word Samar means war in Sanskrit, right? So he's born in the time of war, and that's why it's called Samar, okay? Now, the other thing I've underlined here is deadly. So people were dying in large numbers. Any guesses from the audience on how many people died of this 500,000 people who walked? How many people died on the way? Not bad. Who said that? Good. 50,000 to 100,000. Estimate's not clear. Lowest estimate is 50,000, 10%. Highest estimate is 100,000, 20%. Something in that range. So, and I kind of went and looked at why did people die in such large numbers. Turns out they had to avoid bombs that were falling from the Japanese bombers. They had to avoid epidemics because cholera was rampant on the whole path. They had to basically fight off starvation because food was hard to get. And they, of course, had this problem of, essentially being eaten by wild animals because Arakan hills are extremely dangerous. So, you can get the hang of this challenge of making this happen. The next part, of course, my mother, and her birth story or early life stories are just equally fascinating from a different angle altogether. My maternal grandfather, for some reason, before my mother was born, who was the eldest child, my maternal grandfather had this reason and different story that he committed that the firstborn child of the family to him would be given away to a ashram to become a nun. Right? This is a very famous ashram in Calcutta, which goes back to the Ramakrishna Paramahansa tradition. It's named after Sharada, who's the wife of Paramahansa Ramakrishna. And this ashram was where my grandfather said my mother would go at the age of 5, and she was sent off at the age of 5 to become a lifelong nun. Now, of course, my grandmother didn't like it. She thought it was a terrible idea. She fought with my grandfather for a while, didn't get much traction. So my mother went off trying to become a nun. And then my grandmother said, okay, my husband is not going to help me get my kid back. In fact, husband is the problem. So she went to her brother, my mother's mama, essentially, and said, we got to get this kid back. So my mama basically did something. He pulled strings, and he kidnapped my mother out of the ashram and hid her for a year. So for a year, my mother was essentially kidnapped and hidden until my grandfather relented, and then the kid was produced, and she came back home. Right? Now moving on to the next part of their lives, my father again had what I call the classic Bengali dream run. The Bengali dream run in those days, in the 50s and 60s, basically comprised of two things. One, you're really good in academics, you're cool. If you're bad in academics, only one hope, become a good footballer. Luckily for him, he was both, right? He managed to have an incredible run in college, school college. There are pictures of him, using blue ticks, you can see them. So essentially, by the time he's 10, my father has been recognized as a potentially good footballer and a very, very smart kid. So the rest of his next 15, 20 years goes like a dream because on one side, you can see him winning medals academically and ranking in the board. On the other side, you can see him as part of that Elliott Shield winning team in the middle big shield. Now, 1962, for those of you who are any football lovers here? Very few. Cricket lovers many, but football lovers few. Yeah. Well, you know that Malayalis and Bengalis are all football lovers, right? You know the story. So 1962 is a very important year for Indian football because it was the last time India won the Asian Games gold medal. So you can imagine 1962, Asian Games, India's winning, lots of players from Calcutta in that team. Captains are all from there. And that is the 1962 Inter-College Championship in Bengal, Bengal Championship, Elliott Shield, which my father is a part of that team. So essentially, he managed to pull off this whole stunt between how to be a good footballer and how to be a good student at the same time because he was cracking the academic side really well and got a gold medal when he did his BE in mechanical engineering, and of course, stood a board rank. So therefore, that was really interesting stuff. But anyway, one thing I want to say before I move on here, if you look at the story that I said before, that if you think about it, if you get the drift, if my grandmother had perished in the jungles of Burma, and if my mother had become a nun, none of us would be here today to celebrate this particular, endowment chair, right? My mother's childhood was also very interesting in the sense that after she came back from that, very interesting 3 years in the ashram trying to become a nun, and she was pulled back, she was the elder sister of 6 siblings, became this problem solver because my grandparents had a very interesting life. They would travel a lot, and my mother would be left kind of taking care of the siblings. So she became the favorite daughter for delegation and the favorite elder sister to solve problems and go to. So all the kids you can see on the left side are her siblings. And she got a BA in Sanskrit, but 2 things stood out in her life very early, which is that she had this incredible aesthetic sense, which has stayed with her all her life, which we'll talk about more. Good consensus builder, can solve problems. Very graceful and very calm under pressure. Some of you who met her will know that. And that the ashram never left her at some level. The spiritual lineage that she got from there continued with the rest of her life. The next period, of course, now the two lives start to intersect. These are pictures of their early days after getting married, right? So it's like a classic case of an extrovert, my father, marrying an introvert, my mother. They make an excellent team right through. And in fact, I remember this particular thing. There's a reason why we named it the way we did this chair. Ashwin may not know this, but I remember in my entire life, my sister can confirm that whenever I talk to their friends of that time, when I used to talk to their friends, they would never refer to them as Samar or Jayanti. It's like, what is Samar and Jayanti doing? What is Samar and Jayanti thinking? So they were like a unit that was always conjugated in this particular way, saying that. So we started calling them Samar and Jayanti as one unit, unified entity, and that is how we got the name of the chair as well. They moved to Assam. My father was by then working for Oil India Limited. It's a petroleum extraction company. And it's a beautiful living in Assam in the northeast. And of course, the kids arrived. My father started off as a petroleum engineer, started evolving from there. My mother suddenly found this very, very sort of liberating, the move to Assam, and therefore she became this very, very strong in her creative skills, which she manifested in many different ways for the rest of her life. And those two on the right side are me and my sister. So again, that's just to show that it was a very, very happy childhood that we had in Assam. Now comes the interesting part, which is a lesson for all of us, I think, the next two slides. So my father began as a drilling and rig engineer, which is basically you go back and do on the left side, the pictures you see there, is like you drill for oil, right? That was the big thing that you do in an oil company like Oil India Limited or ONGC or whatever. But I think he tired of it very quickly. He thought it was not very challenging. He thought it was just too much of a, slog of a job. And so he started looking for ways to make his life interesting. At that time, this company, Oil India Limited, had imported one of the first IBM 370 mainframe computers into India. It was 1969 or 70. And my father decided to apply to be transferred to that new team that was being assembled to become a programmer for the IBM 370. So, and he got a transfer. So he does that. He becomes part of this IBM 370 crack team, which is basically automating the supply chain. All the things that you need to run an oil field. There are millions and millions of parts of objects in the rigs. So he kind of went to that team. The transfer, I think, suited his analytical, mathematical mind really well. And I think in no time, he became a COBOL and Fortran expert. Essentially, a part of people who got self-taught at that time. That, I think, in some sense, I think he got his mojo back by, as we call it, by getting out of the oil field and getting in front of the computer. And I'm talking about 1970 now. Then after that, a few years later, about a decade later, by then, of course, he's an expert in management information systems because he's built so many of them on the IBM 370. We came back to Calcutta as a family after a fairly long stint in Assam. And for the first few years after coming back, first about 4 or 5 years, he was getting all these really easy, what we call today a CIO, Chief Information Officer kind of jobs, MIS head of companies. Those days they call them EDP Chief, Electronic Data Processing Chief. So you get those jobs in multiple companies. So he did that like quick succession, 3 companies, a couple of years or less each. But I think he tired of that as well. He said, this is just too boring. Let me do something on my own. So at the age of 44, he sets up his own firm. And essentially what he does first, wise move, recruits my mother to become the head of finance and admin, right? And the memory of the time for me is that he used to talk to me. By then, 1986 when I came to IIT, so keep that reference in mind, right? 86 sets up the company. Same year I leave for IITs. But I remember he talking to me entirely for an entire year about expert systems, because those of you will remember that expert systems were the first generation of successful AI systems in those days. And there was a system called mycin, which used to predict what to prescribe a patient. When doctors could use mycin to generate prescriptions. So he was kind of obsessed by that for a long time. I also draw your attention to something very interesting. He named his company Art Intel Systems. In today's day of AI, I leave it to imagination to think what he was thinking. Because I never discussed it with him. It occurred to me much later that what was he thinking. But expert systems, first generation of AI, and he names his company Art Intel. We all have to infer that he had something in his mind that was far ahead of his times. Then came crisis, right? The lost decade, as we call it in the family. 86, like I said, I came to IIT. My father started his company. And the same year, our mother was diagnosed with cancer, right? I remember that time, many of you don't know this, but my parents used to come to Chennai on their way to CMC Vellore for treatment. This was put up in Taramani guest house for 2 days. Then often I'd accompany my mother to CMC Vellore for a week or two for her treatments. So I had a pretty shoddy attendance record for the first and second year because I was going to Vellore so often with her. But luckily, God's grace, she did really well and she's recovered. And then after about 4 or 5 years of coming out of that period, I think she recovered and she did really well for the remaining 35, 37 years of her life. So she was like the one who fought back. I think the toll of running a company, my mother's sickness and a bunch of other things, I think it took a toll on my dad. And he was diagnosed very shortly thereafter in 95 with aggressive hepatitis B and he succumbed to it. So he passed away at the age of 54, right? So very often people look at the picture that I have in the top, right? And people look at this picture and say, why does your dad look so young and your mother doesn't look so young? The answer lies in the fact that he died in his 50s and my mother's pictures are in their 70s. So that's kind of the story in that sense. So after my father passed away, my mother had her second innings. I think now she became like, I think she took her a while to recover, but I think her spiritual strength was so strong, she bounced back pretty fast. And the rest of her life, till 22 when she passed away, you can see the pictures. She had a whale of a time, right? Once she got back on her feet. She was doing what we call double duty parent. She never let any of us feel, my sister, me, by then, of course, my wife, my brother-in-law, all of them. She was a true mother to all of us and also a father to all of us. In some sense, she was covering up for the gap. All her siblings on both sides of the family, my father's side, mother's side, still today relate to her as the elder sister, right? So that has been one of the strengths you can see in those pictures. And then the grandkids arrived, 4 grandkids, granddaughters. I think she had a whale of a time with them. Great reader, read lots of stuff, a great traveler, and again, a real connoisseur of good art and good design. So all that, her life was, I think, that second innings worked out really well for her. So that's kind of the story of my parents. Now let me try to conclude by saying that, why are we here? We heard from all of the speakers, from Kama to Kaviraj to Ashwin. We set this up as a 15-year chair professorship. I'm right? 15 years, right, Ashwin? Yeah. To be renewed as by mutual consent. It's a chair in information sciences. I don't think I have to tell you why information sciences. It's because of my father's interest in information, data, and all things expert systems, right? The chair is, by definition, designed for IIT Madras faculty members who are in the early part of the career. That I think Ashwin talked about quite extensively. The interesting part about interdisciplinary came through a conversation with Ashwin, saying that, can we make this independent of any department? It's very common for alumni to set up a chair professorship in their own department because that's the most obvious thing to do, right? The gratitude is to the department very often. So we felt that, can we make this happen in a way that any professor from any part of the institution, any school, any department in the institution can be, logically can be eligible for it. We said interdisciplinary research, and we said hopefully a connection to public, social, environmental good that will come out of the research. And I think my favorite topic right now, we talked about innovation, we talked about entrepreneurship. I think Kama made a very good, strong case for it. I think the time has come for her to get some brain gain, right, as a country. With what's happening in the world, what's happening in the US, the loss of respect for researchers, scientists, etc., engineers, I think this is a time for IIT Madras as it keeps climbing the ranks, becoming a top university, to start attracting young faculty, young researchers of world-class caliber to come and live and work in India out of a place like IIT Madras. So with that, I'm very thrilled that the first occupant is here, Professor Rohit Batra. He's chosen as the first chair occupant. Selection committee picked him. Stand up. And it gives me great pleasure to say that his research is in data-driven computational material science. And I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job of it. So I want to conclude. This is my last slide, so I'm really done. Don't worry. Which is that, the left one is a poem by Robert Frost. I won't read it, but I won't leave it to you to read it. It was sent to me by one of my CS90 batchmates after my father passed away. And the one on the right that I think is very interesting, by somebody, a less-known African writer called Nesta Erskine. I think that really summarizes the story of our parents' lives, which is to say that we might not be the ones to change the world, but in the little corners of the planet that we live, in the lives that we have played a part in, we should always be, or we should be nothing but unforgettable. So thank you very much. We're very grateful to IIT Madras for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul, for the deeply insightful and heartfelt address. We are now honored to hear a special address from Dr. C. Rangarajan, former Governor RBI and one of India's most respected economists and public servants.
Professor Komakoti, Professor Harlingham, and friends. I'm indeed very happy to be with you all at this important function. Some of you may be wondering why I am here today. Samar and Jayanti Paul are my sambandhis. There is no English word equivalent to that. And it is indeed very thoughtful of Santanu, my son-in-law, to fund this chair. And it's a way of expressing his gratitude to his parents, and simultaneously to his alma mater, IIT Chennai. Samar and Jayanti Paul were an ideal couple, supporting each other in all ways. People from the family circle and even outside went to them whenever they had a problem and find a solution, and they gave their time fully and affectionately. Samar Paul anticipated the computer revolution. After having had a very useful professional life, he decided to leave that comfortable job and set up a company. We would call such a company today as a startup. And that's what he did. And in many ways, Samar Paul was well ahead of his times. I'm sure that the chair that is being set up will contribute to the development of knowledge in that particular area. Why information sciences? It is perhaps consistent with the work that Santanu's father was doing, and also what Santanu was also doing in the last a few decades. But why information sciences? Why not data sciences? Are we quibbling about words? Long time ago, T.S. Eliot lamented, and he said, "Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information?" We may write one more line ourselves. Where is the information we have lost in data? I remember several decades ago, almost 7.5 decades ago, when I was a student, I used to read a book on statistics, which was titled Facts from Figures. Data, information, knowledge, wisdom are the steps in the ladder of understanding problems. And I do hope that this chair will contribute immensely in the area for which it has been located. In some sense, the age of big data has arrived. Today, with the computer revolution, we can crunch an incomprehensible amount of data. Earlier on, it is only small, relatively speaking, a small set of data that we can handle. And at that time, what is the purpose of data? The purpose of data was used to do things. One, namely, validate theory and find out whether theory accords with facts. And that was the purpose with which data was used. And this is what you might call deductive logic. The deductive logic essentially came from a general postulate and described what could happen. Or, let me put it the other way. Theory set out the relationship between the two variables in terms of cause and effect, which is cause and which is effect. And that is a part of the theory. But the theory, by itself, can be derived from certain principles, but it has to be validated whether it accords with facts. And that is the purpose for which the data was used. And with the arrival of the big data, is there a reversal? Earlier we talked of causation leading to correlation. Now we have reached a stage in which we can go from correlation to causation, or to the exploration of causation. If in a fairly large number of situations, a correlation is seen between a set of variables, then it should really make people to look ahead and say why this is happening. Two things may be related as a cause and effect, or the two things may be the result of something else, which are the effects of the cause. But whatever it is, correlation can lead to, as I said, not causation immediately, the exploration of causation. I must tell you that most recently, this has proved to be immensely important in the field of medical science. Because the medical science has now seen if these are present together in various situations, then there must be a cause which must be doing this. And in fact, even prescription can be done simply based upon the fact that there is a correlation not among 10 variables, 10 observations or 20 observations, but in million observations if it is there, and that is what that is the result. Therefore, in logic, if you study, there are two things: deductive logic and inductive logic. Deductive logic starts from a proposition and goes to see whether the individual belongs to that category. Let us say the usual thing in deductive logic said is all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. So that is one type of thing. That is, but you can ask the question, how did this proposition all men are mortal came? That is where inductive logic makes a difference. All men are mortal can be derived from some proposition, like latest book of, what is his name, the Nobel laureate, saying that aging is happening because therefore you really find the proposition from the theoretical analysis. Let me tell you, the entire Marxian economics is based upon one single basic, namely labor is the source of all values. Then you can derive the whole of Marxian economics from that proposition. So that is deductive logic. On the other hand, you look at thousands of observations, and if something is happening, then you derive a proposition. That is what is inductive logic. Maybe with the big data arriving and the information and data scientists developing, we can go through the route of identifying propositions or theory from a correlation. I have only one other observation to make, and that is institutions of higher learning have two roles to play. One is to make available to the students the existing stock of knowledge. That is why we need teachers who are scholars. I want to make a distinction between scholars and researchers. Scholars are those who understand everything and can put the whole matter in a format. So we need good teachers because we need to dish out the knowledge that is available. But the second role, which the institutions of higher learning are toward, is to increase the stock of knowledge. And that is where research comes in. It is a research that will really result in the accumulation of knowledge. And I feel I'm very happy that a chair has been instituted with a focus. And that will naturally result in the expansion of research activities and increase the stock of knowledge. I would like to congratulate Professor Batra on being the occupant of this chair. He has a pioneering role to play. And I'm also hope that the colleagues of Santanu will emulate his example and follow what he has done, And finally, I want to thank Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai, and Professor Kamakoti for providing an opportunity for the alumni of the institution to actively involve with the institution and enrich it in many ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for gracing us with your wisdom and presence. It is now my pleasure to invite the first occupant of the early career chair, Professor Rohit Batra, Assistant Professor in the Department of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering, IIT Madras. We invite him to share a few words.
Thank you so much. So before I start talking about the research I do, I just wanted to thanks everyone. And so because the chair is early career, it means that early careers are not familiar with how to give a talk in such occasions. So spare me a little bit if I'm making a few mistakes in that regard. So thank you so much. First of all, lot of thanks to Shantanu and Radha. Thank you for setting up such chair position. I feel really honored. Just being present in this room, I really feel honored. There are really great and amazing people here. Good to see your family and friends as well. It was great to interact with them, and I look forward to more in such interactions. Yeah. So a lot of thanks to Professor Ashwin as well. So I am not sure, I'm sure there is a lot of hard work that would have gone behind it. So a lot of thanks to the ACR office, the Dean and the ACR office team. I actually don't even want to know what all hard work went in there. But with time, I'm sure they'll pull me in, and then it will eventually happen. Lot of thanks to different faculty at IIT Madras. I'll start with Professor Kama here. But really, after coming in IIT Madras, I see there are very good role models available here. I may not have interacted with all of them. I would have interacted with very few of them. So Professor Ravi is here. They all have been constant source of inspiration, motivation, support, everything. And even those who I have not interacted with, I can see, I just feel inspired by the way they are. Their demeanor itself, you feel inspired that, okay, I can also do this thing, I can also achieve this thing. So I really feel happy about the decision of coming and joining IIT Madras. And in fact, I feel there is enough positive energy available for us to possibly launch from there. I also have made a point in my personal life that whenever I get a dais, I make a point that I thank my family, especially my wife. We all know it needs a lot of hard work to achieve something, but the only reason I can work longer in my office is because the sacrifices my wife is making. So just on that occasion, I just wanted to thank our family members for the sacrifices that they are making, and there is not always an opportunity to bring it forward. I had a few more people to thank, but I'm forgetting now, so spare me on that. Okay, so a little bit about my work. So I work in this area of machine learning and AI for materials discovery. So what does that mean is we try to use data science, information science to come up with new materials that could serve the needs of the society. So future needs of the society, the current needs of the society, and so on. So what is interesting about materials is that the number of possible materials that we have is exorbitantly large. In fact, we can do a research paper on exactly how many materials are possible. They are so large. And because they are so large, it makes it very difficult to find that one particular material that will serve the need or the desired properties that we want to look for. One way that generally people will go about doing that is that let's try and do some experiments, right? We call it a hit and trial approach or an Edisonian approach, wherein you just do some experiments, see if this material satisfy the property that you need or not. More intelligent researchers, the way they would do it is they will try to think of some theoretical framework. They'll think from the perspective of thermodynamics, they'll think it from the perspective of kinetics or quantum mechanics, and then try to come up with, okay, let's try this one because this makes more sense. I expect this material to behave in this particular order, so let's try that thing. So this is also fine, but lately what we have to realize is the space of materials is so large and the nature is so complex, these theories are not enough. We are not able to utilize to the level so that we have practical outputs which can readily be commercialized. So for example, if I say, tell me a material that will serve the purpose of carbon capture, CO2 capture. Even if I use all of these theory, we haven't found a very good material that can do this thing immediately. And so if you want to search for materials in this large spaces, this is where data science and information science comes into the picture. This is how I try to use machine learning methods to arrive at these solutions earliest. And the way we do it is, we look at whatever the experiments have been done so far. So whatever data present on materials have been developed so far, whether these are successful experiments, whether these are failed experiments, we use that data to build a machine learning model or to build an AI model that will help us screen millions or billions of these materials very quickly. And from this few screened examples, we actually go and do the experiment. So basically the machine learning method is guiding the experimentalist that, okay, go and perform the experiment for this particular case. And hope is that we are able to accelerate this process. So instead of taking 20 years or 25 years to search for the material, we are able to possibly bring it down to say 5 years or so. So some of the particular areas of research that I work into, mainly 3 areas I'll talk about today. So first is I have done some work in the area of finding polymers using this machine learning methods. So one example I can give is we are looking to find polymer electrolytes in lithium-ion batteries that will help resolve the problem of these batteries catching fire. So can we come up with electrolytes, polymer electrolytes that will allow these batteries to be functioning at higher temperature in a more efficient manner. Another example is on shape memory alloys. So this project we are working with DRDO, so these shape memory alloys are very strategic materials for defense applications. And unfortunately, in India, any shape memory alloy, we have to import it. So this project is about, can we indigenize, can we find the processing of these shape memory alloys within India? That will also be very beneficial for our country. Another third topic, which all topics I'm excited about, but maybe this will create more excitement to all of you as well, which is the area of self-driving labs. So what I mean by that is we want to create machine learning and AI-driven robotics lab which are doing these materials experiments autonomously. So what I mean by that is basically a human researcher comes and tells to this robotics lab that I want a material with this high strength and these other properties. The machine learning algorithm decides that I need to perform this experiment. Robots come and do the experiment, they perform the experiment, they make the material, they measure the properties, and that data that is generated goes back into the machine learning algorithm to tell what should be the next material, the experiment that should be tested. And in fact, if you see, there is no human in the loop, except that I want a material with this property. So we call this concept as self-driving lab, which can run by itself and can hopefully tell us the interesting materials at a much faster rate.
This chairship is for humans, otherwise the robo may receive next thing.
So my part is to develop such a self-driving lab, and so that others can use it. Yeah. And then I think what Dr. Rangarajan was mentioning, that is very apt. What we try to do is, from this data of material experiments that have been done, we try to look at the correlation and then find the causation. And we try to find what are the scientific insights or the scientific causations we can get from this data. So that is very much which we attempt to do. Not always we succeed, but yeah, that's an always ongoing attempt. So with this, I'll close. Again, a lot of thanks to Santanu, Radha for setting up this chair. I really feel honored, and I hope I set up a good tone so that the next chairs are even better than me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We wish you continued success in your academic journey. I now invite Professor Kamakoti to adorn Dr. C. Rangarajan with a IITM logo embedded Angavastram, and Professor Ashwin to present a memento as a token of gratitude. I request Professor Kamakoti to adorn Dr. Santanu Paul with an Angavastram, and Professor Ashwin to present a memento as a token of gratitude. I request Professor Kamakoti and Professor Ashwin to present a memento to Dr. Radha Rangarajan, Director, CSIR, Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow. I now request Professor Kamakoti and Professor Ashwin to present a memento as a token of appreciation to Dr. Rohit, the early career chair occupant of the Samar and Jayanti Paul chair. Congratulations, Professor. If anyone from the friends and family would like to share a few words, we would love to hear from you.
I am quite used to addressing 240 students. First of all, hearty congratulations. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. The heart of Indian culture and the way in which the major slogan or the only slogan is Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava in Sanskrit. Mata, Pita, Guru, Devam and all. The way in which the parents are treated in our culture and society is amazing. And in Tirukural they say, Magan Tandai Kaattu Mudavi, Inan Tandai Ennotran Gunnunso, which means, what a prayer your parents have done to have you as a son. So, this is an amazing prayer they have done, and they got him as a proud son. And today, in a fond memory and remembrance of them, he has instituted it. In a personal mail to him, I wrote to him that when I became a chair professor, similarly funded one, I felt really happy and honored. And then, after all, when somebody recognizes all the hard work that you do, the researchers and faculty members feel really delighted. And your effort is going to give many more delights to many more such faculty members. I could imagine that. And I could feel the joy of our recipient here. 8 years back when I received it, I was feeling so happy. And then it's good that it's a great opportunity that is encouraging a lot of faculty members, giving joy, pride, and then recognition, and so on. Brings so much of warmth and good health and good cheer to the society and community. It's a great give back to the institute. Once again, warm wishes. Okay. All right. Yes.
I don't want to be graded again.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor. Ma'am, would you like to share a few words, please?
I hadn't planned for this, but I'll say once again that, Shantanu, of course, started to talk about this idea several months ago, maybe a year ago. And he wondered what was the best way to honor Ma and Baba. And there were many ideas that came that we discussed and we talked about, including doing annual events in their names and so on. But eventually he shortlisted it down to one or two things where he could really express his gratitude in a very tangible way. And he also wanted to express his gratitude to IIT Madras as the place where the foundations of his personality, the foundations of his career were laid. And so both these came together very nicely in the sort of conceptualization of a chair professorship. And then reaching out to IIT Madras, discussing over several phone calls as to how this could be done, it really eventually came together in the format of a chair professorship. And Ashwin, we really would like to acknowledge the role that you played and Kama for really steering this in a direction that we could make it happen. So many things come together in one stroke. Of course, remembering our parents and paying back to the institution that has shaped all of us. And how he was shaped then influenced, the life that we've had together and the and then of course everything else that we've done. Shantanu spent much of his life as an entrepreneur. He started a company, Talent Sprint, in 2009. The company has now been, twice acquired, first by a National Stock Exchange and then by Accenture. So he's had a very interesting ride. I would say that he was greatly influenced by his father, who started a company at a time when nobody did that. That entrepreneurial spirit was part of him from the very beginning. In fact, this was his second company. The first one was Viveka, which he started in Boston, sold. Then he worked at Virtusa and then started Talent Sprint in 2009. So Talent Sprint was focused on upskilling students. So once again, in the area of education. The premise of the company was that students who graduate from universities and colleges that are not quite as well endowed at IIT as the IITs, they're not job ready. And so what should be, how can we fill that gap between what industry needs and what the colleges are able to produce? And that was how Talent Sprint was born. There are several colleagues from Talent Sprint here who have been part of that journey from the very beginning. And I think that, again, that whole Talent Sprint story has its origins both in what, in Man Baba's spirit, which was really one of innovation and entrepreneurship, but also one of emphasis on education and skilling and employment generation. So in many ways, this chair professorship brings together many different aspects of our lives into one tangible form that we will see now play out over the next 15 years, and we're really delighted. Thank you very much to the IITM, professors and ICNSR, and of course, congratulations, Rohit. We're delighted that you're the first chair. Thank you.
So would like to use this mic. Can I just make one introduction to you? Yeah. Okay, we have some, as somebody said, I think you didn't quite realize what you were saying when you said that, but some amazing people in this room. One of them is Mr. M. Balachandran. He's stalwart in the field of banking. He was chairman of Bank of India. He was chairman of what every young person in this country dreams of, IBPS, Institute of Banking Personal Selection chairman, and then most importantly, chairman of NPCI, which built UPI. So please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. I am a man out of the context here, in the midst of scholars, faculty, professors, researchers. As Santanu has introduced me, I'm a banker, a finance person. And to speak in the presence of our guru, Dr. Rangarajan, who has been an inspiring and tall personality for all of us when we were bankers, is something, a honor that I feel. Santanu, I had known him almost like 11, 12 years. As I had known him as an entrepreneur and as chief of Talent Spirit. That is where I came in contact with him. Especially I was quite impressed the way how he was trying to help people to develop their upskill their ability to get into jobs. People who couldn't otherwise in the formal channel could not get a job, because I was at that time in charge of Institute of Banking Personal Selection. We used to screen about 1 crore and more of people for various kinds of jobs, more particularly in finance. Simultaneously, I was also chairman of National Payment Corporation of India, and we were trying to find out some personality who would fit into our scheme of things in NPCI on the board. NPCI was at that point of time shaping itself to become one of the Asia's biggest retail payment system. And having known him with his computer background, entrepreneurial skills, and also the way how he was so much interested in upskilling people, I thought that he could fit into all the facets that what we wanted to be. Now, coming to this, when I heard him setting up this kind of an endowment, going back to the campus and trying to help the campus and endowing some kind of a chair is not uncommon. But here he has done something very unique, trying to be remembering with gratitude the parents, the way how he is explaining the way how his parents grew up, and at the same time giving back to the campus is something very unique. And all that I have come here to say is to compliment him and Mrs. Radha. I had met her once when in Talent Spirit about 10 years ago. It was very wonderful of both of you to have thought of this kind of unique initiation of setting up Samar and Jayanti Paul chair. I wish you all the best. And I must also congratulate the chair who will be there to do the best to see as to how you will be bringing out that kind of research output that will be helpful to the society at large. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. To conclude today's ceremony, I now invite Ms. Sujata, Vice President, Alumni Relations, Office of Institutional Advancement, IIT Madras, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to offer the vote of thanks for such a wonderful, warm and ceremony. I'll keep it really short. I would like to thank our director, Dr. Kamakoti, and our dean, Professor Ashwin, as well as all the other faculty who have come here to participate in this event. A special thanks to Dr. C. Rangarajan, former Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, for gracing us with his esteemed presence and for giving us that wonderful speech. A sincere thanks to Dr. Santanu Paul, founder and former CEO of Talent Sprint, and Dr. Radha Rangarajan, the director of CSIR, Central Drug Research Institute, for joining us on this occasion. And a special thanks really for sharing that your parents' story. It was really wonderful to watch those slides. Congratulations. Also, I would like to thank Ms. Sabina Norona, who helped us with all the planning on behalf of Dr. Santanu's team, and for all her support, and Angelina, and she worked together to put everything together. Congratulations to Dr. Rohit Batra, the first early career chair occupant. And also, last but not least, my thanks to all our team members, led by Kaviraj and the ACR team, who have put the event together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sujata ma'am, for your warm closing words. I now request everyone to rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this special celebration. We invite everyone to join us for the high tea arranged in the main dining hall. Wishing you all the blessed evening. Thank you.